During the breeding season, females visit the males in a special courtship arena. It's the female cob which chooses her male, not the other way round. And in order to check on his fitness, she keeps him on his toes. At the same time, in the same arena, remarkably similar behavior is taking place between two females. There are plenty of available males, so this behavior cannot be dismissed as opting for second best. The courtship is extremely elaborate. One female solicits another by whistling. If the second female is interested, the first uses a gesture known as foreleg kicking to delicately touch her genitals. This headbutting was once thought to be a female's way of refusing homosexual advances. But some scientists now think females may be competing with each other for the female of their choice. One scientist who chose to ignore homosexual behavior in his studies later came to regret it. From a hide high in the Canadian Rockies, Valerius Geest watched male mountain rams foreleg kicking, just like female cobs. He wrote, "To conceive of these magnificent beasts as queers was emotionally beyond me. But eventually I called a spade and admitted that rams lived in essentially a homosexual society." Denise Hertzing has been tracking these two communities for 16 years and has been able to study male-male and female-female couples. In dolphins, both males and females have what is known as a genital slit, and same-sex partners stimulate this slit with their beak or rostrum.
There's a behavior called beak genital propulsion, where they seem to push each other. It's probably just a form of stimulation along in the water with one dolphin's rostrum and the other dolphin's genital. Male-male and female-female.
But if female pairs are normal, how do they fertilize their eggs?
The explanation for how female-female pairs lay fertile eggs is presumably that they copulate with males somewhere else in the colony, because we have trios that include males, but more often than not, the females that pair together do not have a male as part of that social group that's attending the nest.
So the male is essentially just a sperm donor, and one of the females must take on the traditional male role, hunting for food. Imagine their excitement when they began to film the first ever mating witnessed by humans between these elusive creatures. Then imagine their shock when they realized they were watching two males. And the surprises were far from over. These octopuses belong to two different species. The little white male is trying to mate with an octopus over 4 times his size. This finding was so extraordinary that when they returned to the surface, the scientists asked the expert, Janet Voigt, to check that they'd identified the octopuses correctly.
This preserved specimen, part of the Field Museum of Natural History collections, is a conspecific. That is the same species as the white guy that was attempting to copulate with the other octopus. Now, I said it was really easy to tell males from females. If you draw an imaginary line of symmetry through, in between the eyes of an octopus, there's symmetrical first arms, symmetrical second arms. He had a little damage there. But on the third arms, instead of being long, tapered with suckers carried to the end, in males, that third arm is a little shorter, and the tip has got a grasper-type organ.
This third arm is the male's reproductive organ. In these unique pictures, the smaller octopus is inserting his reproductive arm under the mantle of the larger octopus and attempting to copulate. But why? Some biologists have suggested that in these depths, octopuses encounter each other so rarely that they can't afford to pass up any chance of sex. But octopuses are known to be highly intelligent and sensitive creatures, easily able to tell individuals apart. And if the smaller male made a mistake, surely the larger male would realize this and back off. But as Janet Voigt notes,
he does not seem to be at any time perturbed that the other octopus is there.
And the scientists noted that as time went on, the ventilation rate of the smaller octopus increased, suggesting heightened arousal.
As a centuries-long debate has raged in societies all over the globe in regards to the cause of homosexual sexual orientation. It may be surprising then to discover that Jesus had revealed its cause more than 2,000 years ago, right after he visited with Moses and Elijah during his transfiguration. Now when Jesus had finished saying these things, he left Galilee and went into the part of Judea that is beyond the Jordan. And great throngs accompanied him, and he cured them there. And Pharisees came to him and put him to the test by asking, "Is it lawful and right to dismiss and repudiate and divorce one's wife for any and every cause?" He replied, "Have you never read that he who made them from the beginning made them male and female? And said, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother, and shall be united firmly, joined inseparably to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh? So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man put asunder or separate." They said to him, "Why then did Moses command us to give a certificate of divorce, and thus to dismiss and repudiate a wife?" He said to them, "Because of the hardness, stubbornness, and perversity of your hearts, Moses permitted you to dismiss and repudiate and divorce your wives, but from the beginning it has not been so ordained. I say to you, whoever dismisses, repudiates, divorces his wife, except for unchastity, and marries another, commits adultery, and he who marries a divorced woman commits adultery." The disciples said to him, "If the case of a man with his wife is like this, it is neither profitable nor advisable to marry." But he said to them, "Not all men can accept this saying, but it is for those to whom the capacity to receive it has been given. For there are eunuchs who have been born incapable of marriage, and there are eunuchs who have been made so by men, and there are eunuchs who have made themselves incapable of marriage for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. Let him who is able to accept this, accept it." Matthew 19, 1 through 12. In verses 11 through 12, we see Jesus exempt 3 types of eunuchs from heterosexual marriage. The question then becomes, what is a eunuch? Even more specifically, what is a born eunuch? Let's start with some of the official definitions of eunuchs, as published by authoritative Christian sources, and we'll begin to see the inadequacy of these definitions when compared to what we already know of eunuchs as defined both by God in Isaiah 56 and by Jesus in Matthew 19. From Strong's Concordance, reference 2134. 1. To castrate or to neuter a man. 2. Metaphorically, to make oneself a eunuch, like abstaining, like a eunuch from marriage. Those definitions cover the traditional but limited definitions most church clergy will offer when asked what a eunuch is. But these definitions only cover 2 types of eunuchs, those castrated and those who choose to abstain from marriage and remain celibate. But Jesus mentions 3 types of eunuchs. Born eunuchs could not have been castrated because nobody is born castrated. Castration is a procedure, not a birth condition. Born eunuchs could not have been celibate because nobody is born celibate. Celibacy is a choice, not a birth condition. Born eunuchs could not have been heterosexual or Jesus would not have exempted them from the heterosexual marriage model. Logic would dictate that if born eunuchs are not heterosexual, are not castrated, and are not celibate, then gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender people are the only people group in the world for which born eunuchs can apply. But let's not jump to conclusions. Let's also take a look at more definitions of eunuchs from Strong's Concordance, reference 2135. 1. A bedkeeper, bedguard, superintendent of the bedchamber, or chamberlain. 1a. In the palace of Oriental monarchs who support numerous wives, the superintendent of the women's apartment or harem, an office held by eunuchs. 1b. An emasculated man, a eunuch. 1b1. Eunuchs in Oriental courts held by other offices of greater authority, such as held by the Ethiopian eunuch mentioned in Acts 8:27-39. 1c. One naturally incapacitated. 1c1. For marriage. 1c2. Begetting children. 1d. One who voluntarily abstains from marriage. Let's take a closer look at 1c and 1c1. What does one naturally incapacitated for marriage mean if it's not a reference to gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender people? Even people who are born with genital defects or who are physically injured can marry. Even people who do not procreate and have children can marry. So what does one naturally incapacitated for marriage mean if it does not refer to gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender people? Let's turn to the official definitions of eunuchs from another authoritative scriptural reference guide, Easton's Bible Dictionary. Eunuch, literally a bedkeeper or chamberlain, and not necessarily in all cases one who was mutilated, although the practice of employing such mutilated persons in Oriental courts was common. 2 Kings 9:32 and Esther 2:3. The law of Moses excluded them from the congregation. Deuteronomy 23:1. They were common also among the Greeks and Romans. It is said that even today there are some in Rome who are employed in singing soprano in the Sistine Chapel. 3 classes of eunuchs are mentioned in Matthew 19:12. So even though it distinctly states here that there are 3 classes of eunuchs mentioned in Matthew 19:12, it fails to define what those 3 classes are. It also omits any reference to the eunuchs God prophesied about in Isaiah 56 in reference to overturning the ban Moses had put in place. And let's look at yet another authoritative Christian Bible study resource, the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament. 1. Outside the New Testament, eunuchos is used not only for men, but also for castrated animals and for fruits or plants with no seed or kernel. 2. Castration is alien to the Greeks, but is found in the Near East. Eunuchs here are overseers of women and confidants of rulers, often in places of power. Eunuch priests play a role in many cults. Perhaps the idea is that of assimilation and dedication to the deity. 3. The Old Testament forbids the castration of men or animals as contrary to the Creator's will. Deuteronomy 17:16 and 23:2. The desire for a healthy cultic order may play some part in the prohibition, yet the prophets insist that God's boundless love covers eunuchs too. Isaiah 56:3. The Old Testament term seres denotes a military or political official, as well as a eunuch. 2 Kings 25:19. The LXX rendering eunuchos may imply emasculation, but does not have to do so. By the time of Jesus, Hellenistic influences strengthen a more lenient attitude toward eunuchs in some circles, such as in Herod's court, where Josephus tells us the 3 chamberlains were eunuchs. 4. Rabbinic Judaism, however, insists on the duty of marrying and having children. In view of this, Jeremiah believes that Paul must have been a widower. 1 Corinthians 7:7. 5. Jesus transcends the rabbinic view by differentiating three groups of eunuchs in Matthew 19:12. Those who are so from birth, those who are castrated, and those who emasculate themselves for the kingdom's sake. In the latter case, the sense is obviously figurative. The reference is to those who renounce sex in order to focus on the higher goal of the kingdom, as Jesus himself does. The gospel affirms the natural order, but may require its denial for the sake of the new and higher order. 6. In Acts 8:27, Isaiah 56:3-4 comes to fulfillment as the eunuch of Queen Candace comes to faith and is baptized. 7. The early church mostly takes Matthew 19:12 figuratively and excludes from the ministry any who are castrated except through no fault of their own. Once again, even through this lengthy explanation that clearly states Jesus recognized three different types of eunuchs, it fails to provide three different definitions. So while I appreciate the official definitions of eunuchs, even these continue to support the definition of born eunuch as gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender. So let's turn to other scriptures where eunuchs are mentioned to see if we can define born eunuchs by the contextual use of the term and allow scriptures to interpret scriptures for us. Note, unless otherwise noted, all scriptures used in this book are from the Amplified translation of the scriptures. It translates the original Greek, Hebrew, and Aramaic languages in which the scriptures were written by using a system of brackets and parentheses to include additional English words necessary to accurately convey the entire meaning of the original words used. In translations such as the King James Version, scriptures were translated by choosing the best singular English word to convey the meaning of the original manuscripts and provides a word-for-word translation. By comparison, the Amplified translation adds as many English words as are necessary in order to convey the entire meaning of the original manuscript and provides a complete thought for complete thought translation as you read along, so you don't have to be a Greek or Hebrew scholar to comprehend the original words used. The first time the word eunuch appears in Scripture is in Deuteronomy 23:1, where we learn that Moses banned one of the three types of eunuchs Jesus mentions from the congregation of the Lord. He that is wounded in the stones, or hath his privy member cut off, shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. King James Version. It's important to note that this is the only time in scriptures that the word eunuch is clarified as meaning he who is wounded in the testicles or has his privy part cut off. This means that the only people Moses really banned from church were those not physically intact and unable to produce children, hence making them ill-suited to growing the new Jewish faith. In true exclusionary fashion, people began to assume that every time the word eunuch appeared in Scripture, it was referring to a castrated male. However, if we look at another use of the term eunuch in Scriptures, we find a prophecy from God himself in Isaiah 55:11 through 56:12 regarding eunuchs, and discover that some eunuchs aren't even male, but are female.